Fewladelphia is reaching a turning point. With the gentrification of Fishers Point now complete, it's time to turn our attention to new development. And as demand for residential continues to soar, today we'll be making use of the empty land between Fishers Point and Few Haven to start a brand new district, bringing in new housing and jobs to the city. Let's dive in. Before we kick off today, I just want to address a couple of things from Fishers Point from the last few episodes, and the first one being the name of our football stadium here. So Jake Forever Random, you suggested the Fewladelphia Rovers FC at Lopo Point Park because of our big sponsor, Lopo, so we've renamed that. Thank you so much for that suggestion, love that. And then over on this hillside over here, so Phil Moore pointed out that the single family homes we had on the side of this mountain didn't really fit the vibe of, you know, a dense old town that would have been curling up the hillside towards the big cathedral once upon a time. So I have changed some of them out. I've kept a couple of them, but changed some of them out for more of our row housing over here, a little bit older style, which I definitely think fits a lot better. So again, thank you very much, Phil, for that suggestion. And there's no one particular to shout out for this because so many of you asked for a path going up our big green slope here. So the reason why I hadn't done this was to encourage people to use the funicular, of course, over on this side. But look, I see the logic. So I have put in an invisible path all the way up the side here. You can see there's a few people using it, and use this net lane here just to create a little pathway, which I feel like looks like it could be stairs from a bit of a distance at least. But that does now connect in the top of the cathedral down to the bottom for pedestrian access. And we still do have a few people using the funicular, I would add, as well. So we're still getting used there, and it's not really interrupted that too much. And the next thing is the name of our cathedral here. So Middleveen, you had the most upvoted comment with St Andrew's Cathedral because St Andrew is the patron saint of fishermen. So I love that, and we are going to officially name the Notre Dame St Andrew's Cathedral. So again, thank you very much for that suggestion and for all of your suggestions that came in for that. Now, there's still a few changes that we are going to make to this today, which I will come back to a little bit later on in our build. But for now, we're going to be working on this area here. And there's a number of things we need to address. So as you can see, traffic is chaotic right here at this junction. We've got a queue. Well, actually, here's another queue going back to this junction over here. So the first thing I do want to do is fix this up. Now, because this is ended up being such a busy road, obviously we've got our highway network that spans, well, comes kind of through Few Haven and out through FewK Farms as well. Spans the length of the map there, and then there's a diversion off this way. But this seems to be the quickest way for the majority of our population, which is over here in Few Haven, Gaudy Bay, Atkinson area, to get through to Tinney and to Fishers Point at the moment. So we need to stop that, essentially. So what I'm going to do is we've got this highway road, which will remain a highway. There's nothing built along it up this way. Obviously, it connects into the other larger highway at that point as well. So we're going to re-divert this off through this district and connect it up to the highway over here so that people will hopefully get onto this highway from Few Haven and go up this way for the quickest route in. And then this collector road, we're actually going to change it to a collector because up until this point here, or the other side of the bridge, it is a collector, not a highway road. And this is, of course, a collector coming through down into Fishers Point here as well. We're going to hook this up directly into here and have a junction which goes between the two roads so people can get on and off of the collector and onto the highway if they so wish to divert past Fishers Point at that point. So that's what we're going to do there, and hopefully that will relieve a lot of the traffic in this area. The other thing I do want to do at this junction, which is obviously really struggling, is actually just go super simple on this and add in a large roundabout of some sort. So I'm thinking one with trees will go quite nicely into this area. So if we just do that and then remove all of our trees here, that should really start to help traffic flow a little bit because it's going to give people more time to get out onto the roundabout and round to where they need to go. And we'll see how it goes by the end of it. I think connecting in the other highway so that people aren't all forced through this junction as well is also going to help that. But that should get things flowing a little bit better, which it feels like it is already. And there's just about enough space in the side of the cliffs here to add that in appropriately. So I think that that is going to work pretty well there. Now, just before I do that, there is one other thing I'd forgotten at the start, actually, that I did want to do here, which is change up Hoskins Castle. So the nomadic narrator, you reminded me that we could of course use our service blocks, which we didn't have when we built Hoskins Castle, to actually make this somewhere that people might actually want to come. And I also realised as well, now I know how to do it with the net lanes, we should really extend the net lanes over these gross looking bridges as well, so we will do that. But yes, of course, when it comes to service blocks, let's definitely add these in. So I'm going to put in a leisure service block into here, and what I am going to do is move it so that it's hidden within this little food truck here, which hopefully we can achieve if we just angle it a certain way. That looks like it's pretty hidden there. And then onto that service block we can add some extra blocks as well. So definitely want a sightseeing zone in here. So for the moment I'll just add it here and then we can hide it within the castle walls. I'd also like city attractions facility. Yes, definitely. And I think we might add a few of these just to add a bit more attraction into this space. And then park entertainment modifier, yes, let's have a couple of those as well. So we should end up with quite an attractive park, hopefully, that people will actually come and visit. We'll have to see about that, but yeah, let's for now move these and hide them all in the castle walls. And yep, they're all nicely hidden away. So I will try to remember to revisit this later and see how that's getting on and whether we have actually got people visiting our castle for once. And we'll fix up these roads as well. But great shout from the nomadic narrator there. Really appreciate that. So yeah, without further ado, let's fix up this traffic. Okay, so we need to wait for the traffic to correct itself and sort itself out, but we'll see how this does. I've used a bit of lane connector tool from traffic to try and make sure people have got the right lanes to turn and dedicated lanes and that sort of thing. We also get rid of the parking, of course, on this road a little bit later on, but for the moment, I mean, there's still a lot of traffic, but I'm hoping once people reroute down this way, it'll become a lot better. And there's a lot of people using this intersection already, so that's good news. I do just worry that this is a bit of a sort of short turnaround for coming off this highway and out this way. So this intersection is probably still going to be very busy. So what I might do is add in a couple of like little slip lanes that sort of bypass this interchange. So if you were coming along this highway and wanted to get back this way into Fisher's Point, you could come off a bit earlier, just in sort of one direction. This obviously gives them access to any direction they want to go on either road. But I think those smaller access points further back the highway this way and potentially down here as well are going to be quite beneficial in the long run. So we'll see how that does. In fact, traffic has cleared as of now. It's 11:50 in the morning. So we'll keep an eye on that and see how that does. And let's just check back on our roundabout, which is, working swimmingly. So there we go. We'll come back later and see how this does, because the plan for today is to build in this area. And yes, I know, I did a poll, and the highest votes on the poll was to go on to downtown next. However, there were more votes not for downtown, and there were quite a few pleading comments for me to not do downtown just yet. So we're going to complete the transition between Fewhaven and Fisher's Point before we move on. And don't worry, I will be coming on to downtown very soon. I know 42% of you want downtown right now, so it's not going to be that long away. But I do just want to finish off this little area before we move on to it. So it's not very often I ignore a poll, but in a sense I've kind of gone with the poll, but the majority being not for downtown, if I can excuse it that way. I don't know. Anyway, enough about polls. This is what we're doing. So let's dive into Google Earth and have a look at some inspiration for this area. Alright, so we're back in Philly. Of course, I want to take as much inspiration as we can from Philly across Fewladelphia, it being its namesake, of course. And looking up the Schuylkill River, there is this little neighbourhood over here with pretzel parking, which I absolutely love. But I think there's a ton of inspiration we can take from this. It's obviously along a river, which is the same as this area that we're going to be developing. It's got a nice little slope, which you will have seen I've kind of made a little bit more prominent in this area as we put the highway in. But it's got a ton of cool things about it. So the first thing I do want to point out is this little canal district over here. So we have a canal which runs alongside the river here, which separates out almost this island, Venice Island maybe, might be the name. There's a bunch of cool things along here. So like these very modern townhouses here. We've got some condo developments. We come on to what I can only assume is a building site, potentially a quarry. Not too sure, but yeah, really nice nonetheless. All tree lined, which is wonderful. And also, as you can see over here, we've got lots of trees, which we also do in this area, of course, next to Havenwood Forest. And as we come back along, we've obviously got this big bridge going over, which I'm going to come back to in a second. We've got things like parking, we've got more condo blocks, we've got some nice tennis courts, sports and recreation here too. So I think there's a bunch of inspiration we can take from this. So I want to kind of do something similar to this and add in a bit of a canal, which would be nice and fitting, obviously with Fisher's Point just down the river from it as well. Then we come on to this bridge. Now obviously we've got our road bridge over, which is kind of similar-ish to this one, so that makes a bit of sense. But this is what used to be a rail line, and you can see it coming in here and turning into a bit of an abandoned rail, still with some of that poles and infrastructure above it, but it continues. Like we obviously get a car park over it here, but you can still see the remnants of that as it goes behind these houses and turns into a bit of a sort of parking area for these houses, which I quite like, and continues all the way on down here over this car park as well in this section. So I definitely want to do something like that. Now our rail isn't in the right place to bring an actual rail line down here, so I'm going to see as I build it if we can reroute things a little bit, so we'll see about that. But there's also this rail line over the road here, which I do quite like as well. So time will tell if we actually do this or not. But just to point out that piece of inspiration, running through quite I'd say a reasonably suburban area of Philadelphia here. A rail line directly over a high street road. Very interesting indeed. Most of the houses, as you can see here, are sort of row houses. We do have the odd sort of condo block or medium density house. We've got a whole load of churches in here as well, so I definitely want to bring in the UK church. And we've got things like this, which looks like old abandoned factories to me, or converted potentially into more modern housing. We've got row houses here directly onto some kind of warehouse, I'm imagining, at the back here too. So there's a lot I'd like to do with this. You can see the old chimney stack there too. So I'm actually going to be putting in a proper factory, I think, somewhere into this district, which come on to in just a second. But also, if we look at the road layout here as well, it's obviously gridded, but it's a relatively sort of interesting grid. So we've got diagonals coming off in different directions. You know, this bit's relatively gridded here, but then this is a little bit more wonky here. We've obviously got areas where the hillside goes up quite steeply, and then we've got these houses sort of sitting on the top of it with lots of trees in between. We've got another church over here right next to the rail line as well. So I think what we need to remember with this area is not being afraid of adding things like warehouses right next to housing, and intermingling some of that sort of industrial vibes in with the residential over here. Yeah, all in all, really like the look of this neighbourhood, and I want to use this as inspiration for today's build. So I'm going to start off by doing a little bit of landscaping here. We obviously need to bring in our canal and our island area strip along this section. I'm probably going to lower down this part of the hill a little bit as well and get in our layers and our slopes as we go over here. We'll also need some way of dealing with the highway, whether we sink that down and have bridges over it, so bring up this landscape a little bit around it, or whether we want to tunnel under in places, not too sure, but we definitely want some of those street connections going across the highway here, so it's not just limited to this one connection over this side. So we're going to start by doing a lot of terraforming, getting a semblance of a road network, and then we'll talk about the assets we're going to be placing in here. But just before we do that, a quick word from today's video sponsor, which is Instant Gaming. If you're looking to pick up any of the Cities Skylines II content creator packs, or if indeed like me you like to play a lot of different games and don't always want to have to pay full whack to get each one of them, do go and check out my Instant Gaming link in the description below. Instant Gaming has massive discounts across a whole host of games, including Planet Zoo and all of its corresponding DLCs, the entire Sims shebang, and many, many, many more. And if you purchase something via my link, it also helps to support the channel, which is of course always greatly appreciated. Okay, so as you can see, I did bring the rail in. Before I even started this, I was kind of like, look, I've got to do it. I have to do it. So we've brought it in. We've got ourselves in another rail bridge here, and actually it's all sensible grading as well. So there's nothing really over 3% once I'd used Move It to adjust everything. So it's quite appropriate. We come into a little station here where I have rerouted the old line as well. So you can see that's now going through there, straight from the middle of Fewhaven, in between the stop into Tinney. Now I know there's quite a gap between these two stops, so Tinney and... I'll come on to the name in just a second, but you may see it there. And I know lots of you called for a train station in Fishers Point. Being a historical centre would have been very appropriate, and I totally agree. But I like to think maybe there was an old rich aristocrat in Fishers Point that complained about the rail noise, and so they converted it into tram, which is obviously what we've done there. And it is a really well-connected district. It will probably have subway underground subway later on when we start to bring in those networks to the city. It's going to have ferries, it's got trams. I don't want to ruin it by bringing in an old train station. It was never really part of my plans for that area. I wanted the whole thing to be a rail line that was converted into a tram network, so we're sticking with that. But we have got rail into our new district, which is called Baril. Huge shout out to my wonderful Fewniverse Elite member, Baril Boy. Thank you so much for all of your insane support. New area in honour of you. And if you would like to know how you could possibly have areas named after you in the city, check out my links to Patreon and to YouTube membership in the description below. Thank you so much, Baril Boy. Really appreciate your support. So yeah, we've got quite a simple road layout in here. What we will do is come in and add a lot more alleyways and kind of interesting things as we go through it. Now I did think with this section we could have some of our forested hillside here with some of the houses poking out of the top. Obviously I've flattened it off a little bit. We've got a nice narrow canal in here, so we'll come back to the island a little bit later on, and then it comes up to a much more flat area actually up the back here, which we're gonna kind of come on to probably in the next episode, but there is one thing I want to put up there a little bit later just to get things moving in this district, so we'll come back to that. Now the rail line, of course, we have got this bit over the road over here, which I think actually works quite nicely. It makes this intersection feel really busy, and oh yes, look, with the train coming over as well. It feels very infrastructure heavy, shall we say, in this space, which I quite like, and we're going to build up around it, of course, as well. We'll also have green space, don't worry, there'll be a lot more green space here than there was in Fishers Point as well. And we can see as well, traffic is starting to build up a little bit here. I do need to go through and remove some of the traffic lights I've now inadvertently put in with my new road network, but of course we will do that further down the line as well. But the first thing I want to touch on is the abandoned rail line. But I'm thinking an abandoned rail line could be brought in through the centre of these sort of blocks here, under this bridge, and then maybe out towards the coast over this side. And I think what would be nice to make it make sense is have a bit of an abandoned bridge, or the signs of an abandoned bridge maybe coming underneath this one and across here somewhere. So not have the actual bridge, but just the pillars rotting away and that sort of thing. So that's what we will do when it comes to some detailing. So for now, I just really want to mark out where the main track is going to be. Now I want to get this back to ground level. Let's make sure it's forced to ground, yes. So something like that. I'm kind of happy to keep the level crossings, I think. What we might do is, yeah, I think what we are going to do, in fact, is break it and have it so that we can just use Move It to get the train tracks right up to the edges of these nodes, just so we don't get that kind of bumpy bit in the road as well. And it will just make things a little bit smoother, not having any even makeshift level crossings there. So we'll do a lot of tidying up of this later on, and probably take out some sections of the actual rail so we can't see it. We'll definitely cover things up with some surfaces and some decals there to make it much more palatable and realistic. But I think at this point we might actually leave the level crossing as a bit of a sort of token gesture, and then we can bring out the rail line along the edge along here. And we could just leave it at that point. I don't think it necessarily needs to go any further. But yeah, that will give us a nice bit of abandoned infrastructure running straight through our district, which I think will be pretty cool come the end of it. We do have some traffic warnings over here. Oh my goodness. That's a lot of traffic. And we are at rush hour at 8:50 in the morning, I've just realised, so that probably is not going to help. But we are going to remove all of those traffic lights. See if that helps keep things flowing a little bit. But I think we're probably going to have to sort out this intersection and do something a little bit cleverer with it. We do have, you know, extra dedicated turning lanes, all that kind of stuff. But people just seem to be waiting too long, and then of course they won't get into the right lane until too late, which backs it all up, and yeah, a little chaotic. I don't mind a touch of traffic. I think having some traffic around the city definitely makes it feel a bit more alive. But at the same time, I also want to make sure we've got an efficient road layout, of course. Right, so let's talk about the elephant in the room before we start getting any buildings in here. Unemployment is at 21.5%. Far, far, far too high. So one thing I think would be really nice to add into this district, as we saw on Google Earth, there were lots of abandoned old factories, with still quite a lot of functioning industry actually around that area, but a lot of those sort of old brick factories that were left there. So I think what we might do here is actually put in one really large functioning brick factory, being the paper factory here, because we have a lot of trees, as you know, from Havenwood Lumber Inc. So if we put it up with enough room that we can bring a road in between it and the rail line here so that we can build in that space, but have a pretty large factory right about there, I think it adds a certain special something to this area, and it's going to be a huge, big sort of peak on the skyline of Burrill, as it were. It's not going to be a massively built-up district, it's going to be a medium-density style district, as you saw from Google Earth. But you see, just having those little bits of extra height in the background, I like that. And as we come up this highway as well, it's really nicely hidden by the hills, and then, yeah, you see those smokestacks, you come on round, and then you get a bit more of a reveal of the factory up there. So I think that adds a bit of prominence. It adds some purpose to the area as well. Like, it could have been built up around the old paper factory originally. And of course it's going to add a ton of jobs. Definitely what we need. So let's go ahead and connect it in, and then we can have a look. So yeah, 529 employees. I love that. I think with this road we might bend it out and get into whatever district we decide to put there further down the line, but for the moment we're just going to connect it up into this road. Now we've got a ton of detailing to do around this, I'm not just going to leave it like this, but yeah, already we're almost filled up all of the jobs here. Can we have a quick little look and see what that's done? Well, it's dropped it down 1%. 1% is not fantastic though. We need it to go down a bit more. Okay, it's more than 1% though. That's good news. Yes, okay, it's continuing to drop, so I like that. It's going to be a big help to us, I think, overall, having that huge factory in here. And there's possibly some other little factories I'd like to get up here, because just to talk about how we're going to zone this area, this whole district here is going to be mostly housing, some mixed use, but mostly row housing with the odd condo development in it, of odd medium density block. Similar up here as well. So again, mostly sort of row housing. I think we'll come into some more single family homes in this sort of in-between district. But then I think this back bit, so the other side of the highway over here, we're going to focus on large industrial spaces, maybe a few little office parks and that sort of thing, really cram in the jobs in this sort of out-of-town factory area that we're going to have up here. And we've also got access, of course, to this space here, so we'll try and utilise as much of that space as possible to cram in as many jobs as possible. But I think for today, we're probably going to focus on this town centre area. So we're going to drive up unemployment once more as we add in more houses. Down to 19.7, we're below 20%. That's an improvement. And then we'll be fixing that next time with a whole bunch of jobs. I'm just seeing we've already got people using the station, and this child is going to school. So he's going to Atkinson Elementary School, and he lives in Fishers Point, on the outskirts of Fishers Point. That's a bit of a problem, I won't lie. So our Fishers Point Elementary School is full. Now, I did, and I'm not even sure I mentioned this actually in the episode, but I definitely put in another school block somewhere around here. Yes, the Navy Yard Elementary School, which is also full. So we have a massive schooling problem, I think, in Fishers Point at least. So if we take a look at this, yes, we are falling behind on elementary. We're only just behind, that's not too bad. So we absolutely want to make sure that we get some kind of large capacity elementary school into Burrill. And I'm kind of thinking probably a couple of them. We do have the City Elementary School. I feel like this is a bit too big, but that has a capacity of 1,500. Now the US Southwest Elementary School, of course you can upgrade it to be a massive capacity, so that's also quite beneficial. The EE Elementary School also has a capacity of 1,500, which could potentially work in this district. And I'm thinking maybe up on this hilltop up here, it could be quite a nice little feature point. But I don't really want to squash down the hillside too much. I already kind of condensed it a little bit and reshaped it a touch, so I don't want to affect it too much more, and I feel like that probably will. Now, if we could put it about here, let's try it out. Let's try it out. And I think that might work actually quite well with a nice forested hillside around it. We can't put any upgrades onto it, so that is going to be how it is, but I think that might work. And it kind of gives me a similar vibe to some of the buildings we saw actually in Philadelphia, so we'll go with that. But I think let's try and get in one other school. And I think, even though we used it in Fisher's Point, I think we are going to go for the Northeast Elementary School. It's got the right vibe for this type of area, for what we want. And I think we can make it fit into this space here reasonably nicely with a bunch of detailing around it. I think that's going to work. And of course we can also upgrade this as well, should we need to. So we'll get an extra 300 capacity maybe on it. And in terms of high school, I think we're going to go for the modern high school here. It's got a capacity of 1,700. It's probably a bit more than we need. And I'm thinking maybe along this road, if we get rid of Moonflower Lane, could be a good place for it, because then we've got some space to put in some kind of makeshift sports fields, etc. behind it here, in between the edge of the highway and our main collector road here. So this could work. We definitely don't want it hooking up into the highway there, so we might just squidge it over a little bit so it's slightly further away. And yeah, I think that's going to make a nice building on the side of the hill there too. And both of those are really nice and easy access from our train station as well. Now, of course, as I mentioned, I definitely want to get a church into here, just like we saw in Philadelphia. And I'm thinking somewhere up this hill would be kind of cool to squeeze it in, but I think we're going to have to do a bit of better bulldozer to make it fit. We could squeeze it up to the abandoned rail line at this point, so we're probably going to want to do something with that path, let's face it. But it will squeeze in quite nicely there, potentially with some buildings this other side. Again, may need to bulldoze off some of these elements on that side just to make it a tiny bit smaller. And then we've still got space for zoning down here as well, so I think that's going to be quite nice. Especially coming off the bridge as well, you'll see that church and then onto more of the row housing around it. And that also, of course, gives us death care, which is very helpful indeed. So with medical, I think we're actually going to fit it into a plopped building, because a lot of these buildings are huge and just make it quite difficult to fit in unless we go for one of the sort of smaller capacity ones, which I'm not super inclined to do. I'd rather have a larger capacity, I think. I mean, this one's a possibility, the modern medical clinic, but I think let's go ahead and get our plopped buildings in and then see if there's something suitable we could use with a few ambulance props and service parking, etc. around it and create a bit of our own medical clinic in that sense. But there is definitely a firehouse I'd like to use, and that is the city firehouse. I think this is going to blend really, really well into our district over here. So I think putting it somewhere, not probably next to the main junction here, so we haven't got fire trucks coming out like crazy onto a busy intersection, but somewhere along here could be pretty good. So we drop it in here and then use a little bit of move it. The shadows are very dark today. Just to angle it up against this road, that's going to give us a bit of a forecourt in front of it as well. But I think that's going to be really nice as well, with the rail going over the road and this slightly taller building there will give a nice aesthetic and a nice purpose to that particular building. And similarly, we've got the Northeast Police Station, which I really like again. I think this is going to fit really well into this district. So I think with this one, we're going to bring it a little bit further away, and I'm thinking possibly onto this side road here, which will give us that police yard against that road, and then we can have some row housing up here. Right next to the abandoned rail. I think is quite nice there. I also don't want to forget post here, so I think a Japanese post station is probably going to be quite a good thing. I think what we'll do though is put this up somewhere near where our industrial commercial yard is going to be. So for the moment, let's actually just plop it onto this road over here, and we can reposition it when we come to design out that district. We don't want to forget to put in mailboxes as well, which of course we will do later on. So that gives us all the main services without health at the moment. But I think that gives us enough to start plopping in some of our row housing and medium density housing into this space at least, and some mixed use in there as well. Alright, so everyone's moving in and we've got fairly insane traffic again. The roundabout is holding up pretty nicely actually, so I'm quite pleased with that, as is of course our junction over here. And actually even this one isn't too bad. It's where people are coming in at this crossroads here. Now we don't have a traffic light on, maybe a traffic light would help, but I think it is just a case of moving in traffic. I mean, it's 10:10 at night, so it shouldn't be that busy. So I don't know, we'll keep an eye on it. But yeah, we're getting a nice bit of population into Baril, as you can see here. So actually, if we have a little look at the district stats so far, we've got 1,655 households, or possible households, still quite a few empty at the moment, 2,000 residents and 238 dogs. That is a very high ratio. But yeah, it's pretty bare bones at the moment. Tons of detailing still to put in, but as you can see, we've got a bit of a formation here. Now, I've kind of left strategic bits empty like this, where I thought maybe we could add in a car park or some kind of building site, that sort of thing. We've got another one of those areas right here as well. So it is on a slope, so we're going to have to manage it fairly carefully, possibly with some form of retaining wall, key path around the flat car park area or flat building site area, that sort of thing. We've got areas for parks here as well, so one here and a larger one here behind the elementary school. I thought would be quite nice. And actually really like this little commercial asset. It's a high density commercial asset, in fact. But I just think it sits quite nicely outside our train station here, which will be backing onto the park, of course, with the giant paper factory in the background as well. So yeah, all in all, it's kind of sitting in pretty nicely. Up here, we've got a bit more commercial and more of the mixed use. As you can see here, we've got this old, what I'm thinking was once a big, large factory, now converted into shops and residences over here. And we've also done the same thing with these. I think it's a Southwest US asset. Yes, it is. I absolutely love this one. It's definitely got some kind of factory vibes about it. We need to sort out this path on the edge. It's bumpy as anything right now. But I really, really like that on the hillside. I think once we've got some detailing in around it, that's going to look pretty cool, particularly with that large one in the background behind it as well. We've also got this larger asset here, and the firehouse as well adds to that sort of vibe of those old, larger factory-style buildings. But yeah, mostly row houses in here, as you can see. Yeah, there's a lot of detailing to do in and around all of these random blank green spaces, but I think it will come together. We do also, as well, you might have seen, got this modern condo development at the top of the hill here. So that's where we've got our forested bank. And I think they work quite nicely up here. A totally different style of architecture to everything else we've got around the district, but I think it's pretty cool. We'll get a little park in the middle there. We've got lots of parking around it. Yeah, I think it will work quite nicely. And then I've actually done this little development here because I saw this sort of slightly more modern housing development on the hillside in Philly, in the area we were looking at. So I tried to do something, it's kind of not similar to it, but it's in the same vein, as it were, and used these European medium density buildings just to create 3 little blocks on top of the hillside here, which again, I think works pretty nicely when you start looking at all the layers here too. I'm quite enjoying that. I'm really, really liking building on hillsides at the moment, if you can't tell from the last couple of episodes. Anyway, let's talk about trams now, because I definitely want to get them flowing through this neighbourhood today, and that's also going to massively help people trying to get to school from Fisher's Point as well. We want to make sure that we've got nice connections to our elementary school here, of course our high school and elementary school here as well. So we're going to take this line that's flowing through here. Let's see the line, shall we? That would help. The green line, actually, at the moment, it's turning around in the bottom of the funicular line here, but it will extend on out this way. So what we do need to do is upgrade our roads. Let's grab our double tram track, because it is going to be 2-way at this point, and we're going to continue upgrading these back streets along here. And then we'll also bring it down here, but across our main collector road. I don't really want it running up here, particularly with this junction. Ah, yes, the moving in traffic is still flowing. So we're going to run it down the side streets over here and then across in front of the elementary school here. So we'll make sure we've got a nice easy access pathway up from wherever we put our stops there, which I think will be quite important. And then there's a couple of different options we have here. We could route it directly up underneath the rail to the rail station and then maybe out into the industrial district. And it could also follow on and flow into whatever district we put out here at a later date as well. Or we could bring it down the bottom here and loop it back round this way, which I actually think is going to be more beneficial for picking up a lot of these residents, even though it's a longer loop. But at the end of the day, we're going to have to stop somewhere here. They could get off and walk to these buildings if they didn't want to take the loop all the way around. So that's what we're going to do. And we're not going to create dedicated tram lines in this space. We are just going to upgrade the main road to bring it all around here. And we do want it in here. We do want it across here. And then for now, we'll stop it somewhere outside the paper factory, I think. Now, I'm not sure it's going to create a turning around point on this road. No, it is not. So what we will do here is just for now, and this is temporary, I will change this, do not worry, create a little turning around point, which is ugly as sin, but it will help to get the trams around there. That's okay. We just don't need the other direction at that point. There we go, sorted. So we've obviously got our last stop is up by the funicular here. At the moment, we don't really have any building here, so I'm kind of not going to worry about it, and we can add in the stops when we come to build that area. I do want one here, however, that is way, way, way too big of a segment for my liking. So let's just bring out a side road here to break that segment down so we don't take up so much of the parking in this space. So we've got one on either side of the road there, and like I said, I think that's close enough for them to walk underneath the rail and to the top section if they wanted to. And then let's bring one out here at the bottom of the hill there. And then I don't want to have them too close to each other. This is actually quite a good segment here. We have got a mixed use building. We've got a few little shops down here as well. So that'll be quite a nice place to stop outside them. That'll widen the pavement there as well. So nice from an aesthetic point of view as well. And then let's have another one there. And then I think we will have one just underneath the rail there too. And then definitely outside our station here, so we can connect people into that other side of the tram network. And then we'll have one final stop outside the paper factory just to help people get there. So now all we need to do is extend this line. So that should work pretty nicely, but if we just take a little look at this line, because we had very few trams on it, yeah, we've now got no vehicles. That's exactly what I was worried about. So yeah, we've got 10 assigned vehicles to it, but we've only got 3 active. So our tram depot, we're going to need to add, well, that gives us another 5. So let's add that on. So that's a total of 15 from there. We do have our small tram shed, which is just 2. So we've got 17 trams in total. So if we go back to our line, if we look at Fisher's Point line, assigned vehicles 8. Okay, so they've got 8. So that leaves 9. We've got 1 on the funicular. So that means we can have 8 on our Beryl to Fisher's Point line, which we do have, but of course it did say 10, didn't it? So let's just change this down to assigned vehicles 8, and then we won't get the no vehicles warning, or we shouldn't, once it all sort of resets there. And hopefully that'll be enough. It's ended up quite a long line actually now, spanning right from the paper factory all the way around Beryl and down around the centre of Fisher's Point. So I think that'll be pretty helpful, particularly with the train station now here. So that means people in Fisher's Point have the option to get the tram out to the Tinny train station or out to the Beryl train station to get onto the network around the city. Now, I know it's not like the most ideal journey and that's relatively far away, but that's not too much of a bad option. And I think we will also have another train station somewhere here, which would actually be easier access for the people of Fisher's Point than either of the 2 we currently have in existence. But of course, we need to come onto that area to find out. So yeah, here we go. We have now got our trams flowing around the bottom of Beryl, and I'm loving these layers. Absolutely loving that. But anyway, for now, we're going to go ahead and detail the start of Beryl. Okay, I'm super pleased with this neighbourhood. That was a long detailing session. There's so many awkward corners that needed attention and little surfaces that just needed tweaking here and there. And just before I forget, I have added in these little slip roads here. So I've got one just coming into Burrill at this point, and then also another one which comes off the highway, which you could head off towards Fisher's Point or into Burrill from this slip road. And they do get a bit of use. There's no one using them right now. Traffic is actually not too bad at the moment, and we are at 1:20 in the afternoon, so it's not looking too shabby. I think those extra slip roads have just helped to ease it a little bit. I was getting quite large backup, but I don't know if that was just still people moving in at that point or not. But yeah, we seem to be okay at the moment. So yeah, let's just take a little look around, and it's pretty cool. The layers are awesome, and there's some great little sort of back street shots, as you can see, coming up here towards this very wonky playground. We'll ignore that a little bit. But you come up round these tight little back streets down here. I filled a lot of the spaces with slightly random stuff. So we've got a gym at this point and a back alley into the back of these shops down here, which I thought was quite a nice touch. It's a little bit wonky up close, but it's not too bad. We do have a park and a bit more of a manicured space here next to this block. We've fenced in the gas station here. Yeah, created a little triangle on the corner at this point as well, which I really like this actually. I think looking up towards that elementary school, if we remove some of those trees and make that a little bit more prominent, I think it's going to be pretty cool. But it's also this as well, as you can see up the slope. So this, I thought I'd tried to fix that, but it still looks dodgy as anything. I'll do a bit more playing around and see if we can get there. But yeah, it's this effect, looking up the hillside onto those buildings, at the top, which I think is pretty cool. And when a train comes down here, it's pretty awesome as well. And you can see up towards St Andrew's Cathedral at the top there. I did add a little paper billboard here, considering Burrill is now the paper town of Fewladelphia. And then we come on up to the firehouse. Really love actually this cobblestone wall here. I think that works pretty well as a sort of semi-retaining wall, slightly more interesting than using just the game retaining walls here. Definitely need to remember to do that in more places around the city, because I really like that, particularly next to these houses as well. I think that's, when you come up this corner, it's slightly less stark than it would be otherwise. And yeah, let's talk about the high school next. So I added in a couple of tennis courts down here. You can still see a tiny bit of the orange there. I still need to try and tweak that to get rid of it. We've got the homeless moved in as well, of course. But then this blends onto the back of a baseball field. Now I know it's not a full-size baseball field. It's more like rounders that we have in the UK. But it's the only sport field, really, the large one that I could actually fit in here. So I quite like it, to be honest. I think when you're down on this road, or you get down here, you can see that big fence here, which I think is pretty cool. Yeah, I do think it fits into the space reasonably well. We've got an invisible path down here so people can walk around it as if it is one campus around the high school there. I think that works. We've got another little park here. We've just done a lot of landscaping around most of these assets. So yeah, bringing in some pavements here, or makeshift pavements at least, on the sides around the car park and down that back street there. Put in a little industrial unit just crammed in around the back of the houses, which I thought was pretty cool. Double lock, whatever that might be. There we go. We've got little bits of parking and things dotted in on back streets as well, which I thought was pretty cool. Now onto the park, which I really, really like. Obviously going over the paths with surfaces to give them this sort of bendy effect to make it look like you've got a bit of no controller is actually pretty cool. And oh my goodness, yes, we actually have someone hanging out here. I was wondering if this was going to happen. And there's someone in the playground as well. Very excited. Oh, they're very happy. Well, that's good. That's good. Because I have put in a block services park into here and put in a couple of, I think it was the tree parks or something like that, but removed all of the items from it. So I wasn't sure if people would still come in and hang around, but clearly they are. Both of those people were in those areas. I did also try to use the area tools here just to get in an actual park area or a walking area and that kind of thing, but I'm not so sure they work particularly well. I don't know, I've never really seen it sort of in effect, I suppose you could say. But we have got people using the park, which I really, really like. And I went for this bright blue surface, which I know a lot of people are thinking, what the hell? But when you look up close, it does look like it's like that painted coloured asphalt, like the bouncy sort of rubber asphalt that you do sometimes find in playgrounds. So that's what I was trying to go for here. And this was also based a little bit on what I could see on Pretzel Park. I could see a very bright colour underneath a playground area. So yeah, that's what we're going for. We got little picnic benches, that sort of thing. But yeah, I think it fits in pretty well. The highway's very close to these houses, so at some point we may need to introduce a sound barrier here. But I do like this. The bridges and the houses and it all being built up. We've of course got the elementary school here, which reminds me, I did have a look at this and it is already, well, there's 2 places, but it's essentially full. And this one is also almost full, which is mad. So we're going to add the extension and the upgrade onto this school here. Yeah, if we talk about the train station for a second, it is incredibly busy, as you can see, as is the tram network as well. So the tram network actually needs some more trams on it, if I can find a tram to have a little look at. So yeah, 33 people out of 240. So this one isn't full, but as you can see, when you go around the stops and, well, actually, it's a lot less busy than it was the last time I looked at it. Okay, maybe we don't need more right now. At first, it was very, very busy. I wonder if, again, that was affecting people moving in via train, potentially. But you can see here the train station gets a ton of use and it's so good to watch all of this flow out of the station here. I actually did very little to the station other than add in the services upgrade to it and just change out this surface at the front to this nice red brick herringbone pattern one, which I quite like. But yeah, super busy at the train station, and I think you're going to see now a flood of people, yeah, going towards the tram stop here as well. And yeah, this is what I was looking this is what I was looking at earlier, because it gets ridiculously busy here. Yeah, there's a lot of people, but I don't know, it's almost like a little transit hub in itself now within Burrill, so I'm happy to see so many people. That's the main thing that I'll say there. There's so many things we can look at in Burrill, but there's a couple of other cool little things I just wanted to point out, like these garages. Okay, yes, they're sort of partly sunk into the ground at one end, but they have got invisible parking spaces in all of them, which I thought was pretty neat indeed. And then, of course, let's talk about the abandoned rail line. Now, I struggled with the pillars, I'll be honest, and I kind of resorted for probably a bit of an easy route that's maybe not the most effective, but we have used these pillars here to symbolise where the rail would have curved into the main line once upon a time. And then we've got our abandoned track here. Oh, we got someone walking down the path. So yeah, part of it in this section has been converted into pathways, so sort of cleared out and that sort of thing. And then this section is still the old lines in here abandoned, which hasn't had anything done to it. Oh, we'll talk about the church as well. So we actually plopped these buildings over the churchyard here, added in some trees to cover up some of the nasties that we had from that, and then used a French wall prop here just to give a retaining wall on this side, which I think actually works pretty nicely. Quite pleased with that. But yes, the abandoned line continues on out here with a bit of rubble and that sort of thing as we come down to this end where we have got that cobblestone retaining wall again in here. Obviously, we'll continue that when we build out around the island and the coastal area in a future episode. But yeah, it's kind of nice. You can see, obviously, where it is in the grand scheme of things flowing through the neighbourhood. So I'm pretty pleased with it. It's kind of quite understated, but I think it works. A couple of other things I really like as well is this little gravel back street. Absolutely love this gravel texture. I need to use this more. Super cool, and it doesn't really have the track marks in it as well, so it could just look like a bit of a gravelled back street area coming together really nicely with those invisible car parking spaces there too. Also really like this sort of tree lined effect on this road here, and it is all super duper slopey, I would add as well, so you can see those layers coming into effect and the smokestacks of the paper factory in the background there. I love it. So for today, that is going to be it. If you have any suggestions for what else we can put into Burrill on the island, in the industrial area, on the hillside, let me know in the comments below. But that is all from me for now, so thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you again next time. Bye bye.